if you would rather be alone than surrounded by people who drain you, if silence feels more comfortable than small talk, if you've ever been called antisocial, cold, or too much in your own head, this video is going to explain everything. There is something happening inside you that most people will never understand. And I don't mean that as a compliment or an insult. I mean it as a fact, because the research is clear, the psychology is clear, and the ancient Stoics knew it, thousands of years before modern science confirmed it. Intelligent people, genuinely, deeply intelligent people, don't avoid others because they are broken. They choose solitude because they understand something most people don't. That not all company is good company. That not all noise is worth hearing, and that the most important conversations you will ever have are the ones you have with yourself. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will not only understand why you prefer to be alone, you will understand why that preference might be one of the most intelligent things about you. Drop this in the comments right now. My silence is not emptiness, it is clarity. Like this video if you've ever been misunderstood for choosing solitude. And subscribe, because this channel is built for people who think deeply and refuse to live on the surface. Let's begin. The crowd numbs the mind. Here's a question almost nobody asks. Why does being around certain people leave you feeling more exhausted than you were before you arrived? Not because you're broken, not because something is wrong with you socially, but because your mind is doing more work than theirs. When you are in a group, especially one full of surface-level conversation, gossip, complaining, or noise, your brain doesn't switch off. It keeps running. It keeps processing. It keeps looking for depth in a room that isn't offering any. And that costs energy. Marcus Aurelius understood this completely. He wrote in his private journal, a journal he never intended for anyone else to read, that he had to constantly protect his mind from being pulled outward, from being absorbed by the noise and opinions and chaos of the people around him. He called it returning to himself, not running away from the world, but returning to the only place where real thinking happens, inside. Here's what most people don't realize. Solitude is not the absence of something. It is the presence of something most people are too distracted to access. Clarity, focus, the ability to hear your own thoughts without someone else's voice drowning them out. The crowd numbs the mind slowly, the way background noise numbs the ears. You stop hearing the subtle things. You stop noticing your own instincts. You stop thinking your own thoughts and start borrowing everyone else's. The intelligent person feels this numbing and steps back, not out of arrogance, out of self-preservation. Epictetus and the Price of Bad Company. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before becoming one of the most powerful Stoic philosophers in history, had a very specific warning about the people we choose to spend time with. He said, "Be careful to leave your son's character more impressible to tender association, and notice how much every time you are with someone your character either rises or falls. In simpler words, every person you spend significant time with is either building you or eroding you. There is no neutral." Think about that for a second. Every conversation either sharpens your thinking or dulls it. Every relationship either pulls you toward your best self or away from it. There is no such thing as time spent with people that leaves you exactly the same. And the intelligent person knows this. Not consciously, not always with words, but they feel it in their body after certain interactions. That heaviness, that flatness, that sense of having given something away and gotten nothing back. This is why they self-select toward solitude. Not because they hate people, but because they are acutely sensitive to the quality of energy around them. And they would rather have no company than company that costs them something real. Epictetus also said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things." In other words, let people misunderstand your preference for solitude. Don't let them call you antisocial. Let them say you think you're better than everyone. You know what you're actually doing. You're protecting the most valuable thing you have, your mind. The science behind the preference. Now here's where modern psychology confirms what the Stoics knew intuitively. Research consistently shows that people with higher cognitive ability, people who process information more deeply, think more abstractly, and solve problems more creatively, report lower life satisfaction when they spend more time with others. Not because socializing is bad, but because the stimulation they get from their own inner world is richer, more complex, and more satisfying than most social interactions offer them. Their mind is already running at a pace and depth that casual conversation simply cannot match. Think about it this way. If you have spent time deeply studying something, a philosophy, a craft, a problem you're trying to solve, and someone walks up and wants to talk about what they watched on TV last night, that's not a failure of social connection. That's a mismatch of frequency. It's not that you're better. It's that you're operating on a different bandwidth, and mixing frequencies produces static, not signal. This is why intelligent people often describe parties, group outings, and small talk not as enjoyable breaks from thinking, but as interruptions of it. They weren't bored before the social event. They were engaged, building, processing, creating. And the social event didn't add to that. It paused it. Solitude isn't what they retreat to when things go wrong. It's where things go right. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man who chose inner solitude. Here is one of the most striking facts about Marcus Aurelius. He was emperor of Rome. He had hundreds of people around him at all times, advisors, generals, senators, servants, soldiers. He was never physically alone. And yet, every single morning, he sat down alone with his thoughts and wrote to himself. Not to the empire, not to history, to himself. The book we now call Meditations was never meant to be published. It was a private conversation between Marcus Aurelius and his own mind, a practice of deliberate inner solitude. In the middle of an outwardly chaotic life, he wrote things like, "Confine yourself to the present. You have power over your mind, not outside events. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." These weren't speeches. These weren't motivational quotes for an audience. These were a man, the most powerful man in the world, talking himself back to clarity. Every single day. Why? Because he understood something most emperors before him didn't. That the biggest threat to good leadership wasn't an external enemy. It was the noise inside his own mind, and the noise of the people constantly surrounding him. His solitude, even when it was only mental solitude, was what made him one of the greatest leaders in human history. Not his power, not his army, not his advisors. His ability to go inside alone and think clearly. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. Here is the distinction most people miss completely. Loneliness is wanting connection and not having it. Solitude is choosing depth over distraction. They feel completely different from the inside, and they produce completely different results. Loneliness contracts the mind. It makes you smaller, more anxious, more desperate for any connection, even connections that cost you. Solitude expands the mind. It makes you sharper, more grounded, more selective, and paradoxically, it makes you better at connection when you choose to engage. Because here is the truth about deeply solitary people that most observers never see. They are not cold. They are not disconnected. They are not incapable of love or warmth or depth. They are simply very, very specific about where they direct it. Seneca wrote, "I am not a friend to many, but I am a friend to the right ones." And when a deeply solitary person chooses to let someone in, truly in, past the surface, what you get is not a shallow connection dressed up in social performance. What you get is someone who has thought deeply about who you are, someone who is genuinely present when they are with you, because presence is what they practice every day alone. The most loyal, most deeply connected, most genuinely caring people are often the ones who appear the most solitary from the outside because they don't give their attention away carelessly. And when they give it to you, they mean it completely. The world will call it arrogance. Don't listen. Here is the hardest part of being someone who prefers solitude. The world does not understand it, and the world has a tendency to punish what it doesn't understand. You will be called arrogant. You will be called cold. You will be told you need to put yourself out there more. You will be made to feel like your preference for depth over noise is a flaw that needs to be corrected. Do not believe it. Marcus Aurelius faced this too. As emperor, he was expected to perform, to entertain, to socialize, to be seen enjoying the games and the crowds and the spectacle, and he hated it. He wrote about it directly, the noise, the shallowness, the endless performance, but he didn't apologize for his preference. He protected it. He found ways to return to himself even inside a life that constantly pulled him outward, because he knew something the crowd DIDN single quotes T dot, that the depth of a person's inner life is what determines the quality of their outer life. You cannot lead well from an empty mind. You cannot love deeply from a distracted heart. You cannot create anything that lasts from a soul that has never been alone long enough to hear itself think. Your preference for solitude is not a social failure. It is a spiritual practice. It is the thing that makes everything else you do richer, deeper, more real, and the people who matter, the real ones, the deep ones, the ones worth keeping, they will understand this about you, not because you explained it to them, but because they feel it themselves. What to do with this? So here is the question. If solitude is where your best thinking happens, if it is where your clarity lives, where your creativity breathes, where your real self exists without performance, then why do so many people spend their entire lives running from it? Because silence is uncomfortable. Because when you are truly alone, with no phone, no noise, no distraction, everything you've been avoiding starts to surface. The thoughts you pushed down, the questions you haven't answered, the version of yourself you keep postponing becoming. Solitude forces a confrontation with reality, and most people are not ready for that. But you are. Otherwise, you wouldn't have made it this far into this video. So here is your practice dot, not a productivity hack, not a morning routine checklist, not just one thing. Find 20 minutes today, not tonight when you're already tired. Today, and sit in deliberate silence. No phone, no music, no podcast. Just you and whatever surfaces. Don't try to solve anything. Don't try to meditate perfectly. Just sit and let your mind do what it already knows how to do. When you stop interrupting it, you will be uncomfortable for the first few minutes, and then something will shift. A thought will arrive that wouldn't have come any other way. A clarity you've been looking for in other people will appear from inside yourself. That's not magic. That's just what happens when an intelligent mind is finally given the space it has always needed. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus. They didn't build unshakable minds from the outside in. They built them from the inside out. Every single day, in silence, alone. And that is exactly what you were made to do too. If you've made it this far, you already know this is true. You've always known it. You prefer to be alone, not because you are broken, not because you are antisocial, not because something is wrong with you. You prefer to be alone because your mind works differently. It goes deeper. It needs more space. It produces its best work in silence. And in a world addicted to noise, that is not a weakness. That is one of the rarest things a person can be. Seneca wrote, "Retire to yourself as much as you can, not as punishment, not as isolation. As cultivation. Because the person who knows how to be alone, truly, peacefully, productively alone, is the person who is never truly lost. They always know where to find themselves, and they always know who they are, regardless of who else is in the room. That is Stoic psychology. That is the intelligent person's secret. And now it is yours. If this video hit something real in you, like it now, share it with someone who will understand it, and subscribe for more content built for people who think deeply. Drop this final affirmation in the comments. I am not antisocial. I am selective, and that is my strength.